Oh, yeah. Um, Thank you for coming back after the lunch. Delighted to introduce our next keynote speaker, someone I consider a celebrity, or maybe an influencer, given he qualifies for that, given his following on social media. I'm talking about Patrick Murphy, who is the CEO and founder of Togal.AI and Executive Vice President of Coastal Construction. Combining a lifelong background in construction with experience as a CPA. After starting his career at Deloitte, he built across both the financial and operational sides of the industry, and now spearheading innovation with his double expertise. Patrick served in the US House of Representatives from 2013 to 2017 and was the 2016 Democratic nominee for US Senate. Today, he focuses on advancing construction technology through AI while continuing public service through advisory roles and nonprofit leadership. Please join me in welcoming Patrick Murphy.
Thank you, Rudy. Thanks, man. Good afternoon. Thank you. Appreciate it. I know this is right after lunch, so hopefully you guys stay awake on me here. Try to keep it fun and interactive. Dean Rudy, thank you very much for the kind words. First of all, I want to congratulate University of Miami for 10 years now with the Smart Cities Initiative, which started off as a dream and a goal, has now become a standard. And Dr. Ewing, kind of carrying on what you said in your remarks, which I appreciated. What's old is now new again. And I think that's so cool and something hopefully I can weave into my remarks as well. For those of you that missed it, he's got some great research. So I want to start off with a number that doesn't get covered enough and I think should. The global construction industry amounts to about $10 trillion a year in spend. That number is going up and up, and in 5 years, I think that could be over $15 trillion a year. Yet, the construction industry is one of the least productive in the world. According to McKinsey, I met someone from McKinsey earlier that was here. Over the last 50 years, McKinsey did a study showing that there's been a 0% increase in construction in 50 years. Compare that to almost every other industry. That's up 2x, 3x, 10x or more, right? So that's pretty terrible, right? Especially folks like me that grew up in the industry. I know we can do a lot better. And there's a lot of reasons for this, right? There's a lot, I think, that goes into this that's worth noting or at least touching on for a second. Number one is when you think of basically every building on campus, every building in the backyard on your way here, everything you saw was different. Right? It was different soil conditions likely, different materials, different architect, different subcontractor, different builder, different building code, different zoning, right? All these things make construction very unique. And we're often compared to manufacturing, which I think is a sort of a misrepresentation of what construction really is. And over the last decade or so, there's been quite a change in construction. And I think that is pale in comparison, though, to what we are about to see in the next decade. And the real problem has been that when you have this much diversity of information and you have all these plans that are completely different and drawn by architects who in essence are artists in many ways, there has been no technology that was affordable enough to process this information and make sense of it until now, right? And AI is really, really good at taking all of this unique information, all of these plans, and now starting to make sense of it. So in our family business, it's called Coastal Construction. I came back in 2019 after serving in politics and had a fresh set of eyes and was looking at what was driving overhead in our business, what was really driving the cost in our business. Sat with our CFO and saw that the single biggest piece of overhead was estimating, right? The pre-construction phase, where builders receive a set of plans and are asked to price that, right? This is a 2D PDF that we receive. So how do you do it? Well, you got to quantify how much wood floor, right? How much baseboard and how much drywall and paint and windows and doors and everything else that goes into a building. And you do it manually, When I was a kid with my grandfather, I used to use a ruler, a scale, a little triangle-looking ruler. Then the digitizer came out, and now people do it with a mouse. But imagine a building like this, right? Was it a few floors here? This is probably a 3 or 4 day process for someone sitting there coloring, counting, quantifying all the materials in here. And then they have to go price it. Inevitably, in 3 to 6 months, there's going to be a whole new set of plans, right? A whole new revision. So you do it again, right? And then you do it again, right? 3 or 4 times. So that process is called a takeoff. So we had an idea to use artificial intelligence to automate that. The thesis being that if a human can look at the plans and identify the difference in this wood floor and the marble out there and tile somewhere else, then so could a human, or so could a computer if you trained it like you would a human, say a 5 or 6 year old. So we spent 3 years aggregating plans, tens and tens of thousands of plans, and then we trained a proprietary model to read those plans like a child would in essence. And we now have trained on over 20 million different plans from around the world, and the output is instant, and it's now more accurate than a human because we're going down to the pixel level. So that is just one very, very small example of how AI is impacting the construction industry. And there's, of course, a lot to come, which I am excited to get to. One more piece I want to cover on this slide is the future of technology in all industries, but certainly in construction, is going to be more like vibe coding. And there's an example here I referenced with Sunt Construction. They're one of the nation's largest builders. And they did a case study recently. One of their junior project engineers had been dealing with these RFIs and these spec books, going back and forth, trying to get details back to the owner and to the architect. It was taking them on average 7 days. The company Sunt rolled out GPT Enterprise, and the young project engineer said, I'm going to mess around with this. And they typed in the problem to GPT. For just in normal human language, they explained the problem, they uploaded the documents. GPT built an application that has now reduced that 7 days into 1 or 2 days in a tool. That's not a software engineer, nothing fancy. They did it on themselves with a $20 a month subscription. Right? So these sort of custom tools are going to become the norm for whatever industry you're in, and construction is definitely no different. And I want to point out a few other interesting companies that are making big strides in the industry. Trunk Tools is one that's interesting. They've gotten a lot of press recently. So what's happening in construction, similar to a lot of industries, is there's a graying of the workforce. They say roughly for every 4 people that are retiring in construction, you have 1 person entering the industry. That presents a real problem because there's a lot of wisdom in these folks that are retiring. And how do you capture that wisdom? Well, try to get the data is one way to do it, and Trunk Tools is trying to do that by getting all the data of all these individuals that are getting ready to retire, all their emails, right, all their spec books and workbooks that they have, turn that into a knowledge base that now younger employees can tap into. Document Crunch is another one. The founder is actually here with us in the room, Adam. He's on the next panel. You get to hear more about that company, hopefully. But basically, they've made spec books and the legal side of construction much more accessible to everyone in the construction industry and on the job site. And then Open Space. If you've heard of this company's got kind of a crazy valuation. And what they're doing is they're putting cameras based on every floor that's being built or on the job site hard hat. And people are walking around with this camera. And what's that camera doing? Well, it's capturing all the information of what's being built. And it's helping with scheduling because the camera can now identify if the wall was installed on time or is it a week late? Is it level 5 drywall? Is it really good quality or not, right? And so it can help with scheduling, it can help with quality control, it can help with legal, and all of that data, of course, is becoming very valuable. So beyond software, we are also finally seeing changes in the materials and the way that we are building. So if you think about construction from a 100,000 foot level, we basically haven't had a change in the way we build for 100+ years, right? We have concrete, we have wood, and steel. Maybe a combination of those materials, but these walls, everything behind them is those 3 materials. And it's probably concrete because we're in Florida. And that's it, nothing's changed, right? So that in itself, I think, shows and points to some of the problems we have with construction, where when you look at boats, you look at planes, you look at all sorts of other industries have major breakthroughs in construction, in their technologies, and construction's about to hopefully see those same changes. So 3D printing has gotten a lot of press. I think it's an interesting use case for 3D printed concrete homes. There's a company called Icon, just delivered, I think, about 100 homes out in Texas for Lennar. And you're seeing a lot of these companies start to pop up. Another company that we're involved in called Renco USA, it stands for Renewable Composites. Renco is a building material. It's a structural building system made of recycled glass, recycled plastic, calcite, which is like a limestone dust, and then a resin that holds it together. And these blocks are interlocking, so it's like Legos for adults. But it turns out it's stronger, it's lighter, it's faster, greener, and less expensive than traditional means of building. So again, I just point that out as one of many new breakthroughs. But the problem is getting these things approved. I'm involved in Renco, so I know firsthand. It's been over 10 years in getting through the regulatory approvals to get that approved to build in the United States, and a lot more money than we expected. Now, on one hand, you'd argue that's good. It's life safety. We need to be able to exit the building so the building doesn't, blow, all these things that could go wrong. So we need life safety, but the government can play a much more important role in helping to expedite and incentivize new and better materials like they have in other industries. All this is in light of a quite interesting macro environment, I'd say. And I don't think we can talk about the AEC industry or smart cities without at least just acknowledging politics for a second. I'm not going to get carried away here, Dr. Rudy, I promise. But this macro environment that we're in and seeing globally play out has become one of the more divisive times in history. And we are seeing walls being built between countries, literally and figuratively. And the reason I bring that up is because it's changing not only supply chains, but also the global workforce. And if you think about construction and how things have been built and still in many places are built, it's reliant on that immigration. It's relying on open borders. But that's starting to change quickly. And you add this to something more locally that's happening, and we have 450,000 job openings in construction today. 450,000, right? Just waiting to be filled. We also have somewhere between 4 to 7 million housing units that need to be built. We are falling behind every single year with new housing. So the private sector and the industry itself is hitting a brick wall, I would say. And there's a combination of factors, some that I just mentioned, and the rest have to do more with the regulatory bodies that we have, because there's not just one set of regulations. If you're a builder nationally, there's thousands or tens of thousands of approvals and regulatory bodies that you need to manage and try to navigate. And so how do you solve the approval and the permitting process? Well, I believe, starting off with the federal government, that they should be developing a unified building code that they can incentivize local governments to adopt for different benefits, maybe for infrastructure spending and things like that in their areas. At the state and local level, we've seen some of these shot clock regulations come about. If you've heard about this, 60 and 90-day basically guaranteed approvals once you submit your plans. And what that does is really pressure the local governments to at least get comments for plans back to the design team and to the construction team. And so starting to look at the carrot and the stick approach, I think, is critical for government. And someone that was in government definitely knows firsthand how lackadaisical many agencies can be. And I think the key part here is that we have technology that can start to solve this problem. When you go submit a set of plans to the City of Miami or City of Coral Gables, there's around 300 tests that they have to do for fire, life safety, ADA. Right? What's the travel distance to the exit? It can't be more than 300 feet. Right? What's the capacity of this room? Where are the fire sprinklers? Where are the exit signs? Right? All these things. ADA compliant. It's basically standardized across the country. So how do these employees in the governments do this? Well, they get a set of printed plans and they get a ruler and a roller and they measure 300 feet to the exit. And they do it for every single corner of every single room. Think of how mundane that job is. AI can do that really, really good. We actually started a company called Togal.AI that automates that process. So instead of spending days, weeks on this mundane code compliance, upload your plans, click a button, and automatically you get over 300 tests verified for you. And we took a conservative approach to this, so if you don't agree, you're still in control. You can change the output there and get it approved. But at least you have AI doing all the mundane part of this. So I want everyone just for a second to imagine having Albert Einstein sitting next to you. Right? He's there 24/7. He's free, basically. He's in your office, he's in your car, he's in your house, he's wherever you want him to be. Now think about having access to 10,000 Albert Einsteins, or 1,000,000 Albert Einsteins. We are very quickly approaching a world where we are going to have superintelligence on our phones. So it's not just Einstein for physics, or biology, or chemistry, or math, or architecture, or design, or emotional intelligence, or anything else. It's all forms of intelligence, 2,000 forms of intelligence coming together in one device. And quite frankly, I think it's hard to comprehend what any of us can do or what society will do with that much knowledge. But the price of knowledge is coming down to zero. It is going to be basically free. And that's a paradigm shift for society. How the hell do you apply that to our industry? I'll take some shots at it. I believe in the next 3 to 5 years, if you want to design a new building, a single-family house or a basic apartment or hotel, that you're going to have some very basic inputs in a prompt. The address, the budget, the style of construction, and the use case that you want. And with those inputs, you're going to get a full set of working construction documents. I'm not just talking about the design and the facade and the colors or the layout, but what's behind that wall? What's the drywall assembly there? What kind of studs? Are they 2x4 or are they aluminum? How's that exit sign wired and these lights wired? What's the mechanical system? How much AC is needed in this room? Right? It's based on the tonnage. Right? When you start looking at construction plans, on average, they take between 12 to 18 months to be created from the design. There's a lot of engineering. There's a lot that goes into that. That's going to change dramatically with AI because of the access to the data that we've seen through millions and millions of previously drawn plans. Because if you think about it, the AI is going to just say it's 10 million plans. Once the AI can access 10 million electrical plans for buildings in the US, it's probably smarter than most electrical engineers. Fair to say. It's going to be able to generate electrical layout more efficiently than any human and do it a lot faster. So it's going to change the industry. It's probably going to take a little longer than I think, but the technology exists today to do it. It's just about implementing it. The next piece is agents. Perhaps some of you have heard of AI agents, right? We are starting to see more and more companies starting to implement agents and use agents. And think about, I think, the human workforce and what we're all going to be doing is managing agents in the future. So if you're an estimator, you're going to set up your agents during the day, you're going to leave for the night, and all night long, they're going to do your takeoff. They're going to get the bill of materials, going to do the scoping detail, they're going to send out quotes, get procurement details, everything. You come back in the morning, and your estimate that used to take you a month is going to be done. All right, so what used to take months is now going to start happening in days and eventually minutes and seconds. So that compression of time means more money, hopefully, and more output for all of us. And just to keep staying a little bit crazy for all of us here, figured I'd mention quantum computing for a second. I don't think construction and real estate is on the short list for what quantum is going to come after, but when it becomes affordable enough, you can bet that quantum computing will start to change the way supply chains work, the way materials that are being developed for construction are produced, the way they're thought about. Perhaps there's some new materials that we haven't thought of that are going to be better for our carbon footprint. I would imagine quantum computing combined with AI is going to help lead to those breakthroughs. And these changes aren't just in the office. All right, it's not just AI for estimating and architecture and these traditional white-collar jobs in an office. It's going to start impacting the physical jobs, right? The robots are coming. They are being evolved, and they're happening quick. They're coming along quick. There's a machine called the SAM 100. You probably haven't heard of it. It's a bricklaying machine. Their first version came out, and it was 3x more productive than a human at bricklaying. Now, it can't do the whole building, can't do everything perfectly, but the first version, 3x more productive, right? No sick days, no HR complaints, right? No issues to worry about there. It's 24/7. And I think that's the big, thing for us to think about in our industry, is what does a 24/7 workforce mean? How does that change the industry? How does that change, building and timing and the way things are thought about for budgets that are often 3, 4, 5 years for big buildings, all of a sudden compressed dramatically. And when you think about robots, right, I think it's quick and easy to just say, wow, well, it's going to be cheaper and it's going to cost less and be faster. These are great things. But it's not just that. It's the measurement. It's the data that comes from these robots. That company I mentioned a little while ago, that open space company with the cameras, every time it's being used, every single day, it's getting a little bit smarter. It's seeing a new use case, right? That data, that flywheel, starts to compound very quickly over time. And so these machines and these robots that we're going to start seeing on job sites are going to go for the low risk, high ROI areas, laying tile, painting big open spaces, hanging drywall, right? Low risk. So again, back to this 24/7 concept, perhaps a superintendent in the future is going to be setting up a robot at 5 p.m. He or she's going to come back to the job site and all the hallway drywall is going to be installed, or the bedroom tiles installed. Maybe a bathroom's painted, right? All that, again, starts to change the scheduling of construction, helps to reduce the costs that we're seeing. And a key piece, and if there's any students in the room, is estimates show that about 80% of all the buildings that will exist in the year 2050 have already been built. So what's the technology that's going to help retrofit those buildings? I'm sure there's some really cool business ideas in there to think about, but I was shocked to see that stat. And so with all this technology, with the robots, with the AI, with everything changing, right, people get scared, I'm going to lose my job. In fact, I would argue it's the complete opposite. All this efficiency is not going to reduce our ambition. It's actually going to, I think, expand what we believe is possible and what we're doing as humans. Jevons paradox, if you're not familiar, is about 150, 160 years old. It basically says that as the price of a resource comes down, consumption of that resource goes up. Right? So think of the steam engine, think of electricity, think of cars, think of compute. All of these things, lighting, it's everywhere now. You can't go anywhere without lights all over the place and LED all over the place because it's so cheap, it almost means nothing, right? So I believe the same thing is going to happen with architecture, with construction, with the AEC industry as a whole. Because that compression of time that I was just alluding to with working 24/7 and designing faster means the costs will start to come down. Things will become more affordable. We referenced the 5 million or so housing units that were short. Now we can start to address that. And when you have AI, right, as we said a second ago, it's going to be really good at determining, how much steel should be in these columns and what's the optimal drywall layout, what's the best assembly. And taking away those details and that nuance frees up the design team and the architects, the builders, the designers to focus on, I think, what they really want to focus on. Right? And that's building better communities, livable cities, walkable, greener, cities we're proud of. What's old is new. Right? Why do we like going to Europe? Because they're beautiful cities that are walkable and you just want to be in. Because the focus wasn't on the pro forma. The focus was on building a beautiful city. And I think we've lost our way in so much of construction today because we're working backwards. An owner comes and says, hey, here's my budget, blah, 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 work backwards. Tell me how to build it. Right? That's not what made the industry great. With AI, now, I believe, I hope, I have to be an optimist, that we can spend less time dealing with the amount of steel in the column or the drywall assembly and some of the nuance that computers are really good at and probably better than us, quite frankly. But let the humans open up their mind to what's really creative and what makes us unique. So I'm hopeful, at least, that this is what Jeevan's paradox is going to mean for our industry. And for any of the companies in the room, I was talking to some folks earlier asking, about AI, and I've got a company. How the hell do I implement it? So just a few quick notes on that. How do you put this into action? Number one, your data is your gold. So a key component as we move forward isn't just buying random softwares here and there and another one. It's making sure that these softwares integrate, that they all talk to each other. So you're taking advantage of the data and it's helping other parts of your business out. As it relates to data and your documents, control them, right? There's a lot of risk in just putting these out there in the wild. There's a sort of a 4-tier system that a lot of people use for level of document control. There are some things that should never be put on OpenAI or GPT or anything like that. And there's some that it really doesn't matter if they're there. So think about that in your company. I'd also say, and this is probably going to be true for a long time with AI, the humans are in control, right? The AI can draft and make recommendations. The human has to review and the human has to approve. The accountability side of whatever industry it is must remain with us humans. But what this also means is a shift in education. And I think places like the University of Miami that are taking this seriously are going to excel. And those that don't embrace AI and put that at the forefront are going to fall behind really quickly because the gap is widening. And I'm sure a lot of the employers here would say the same. I would much rather hire a young man or girl today that was super proficient in AI than having a degree from Harvard. Because the degree from Harvard is pretty much accessible with AI today. And if you know how to use the AI tools and you have the degree from Harvard or you have the degree from University of Miami, now you're talking. But you've got to be proficient in these tools. And that, I think, is going to be one of the big unlocks and focus areas for students going forward. So, look, with all these new ideas, with all this, innovation, how the hell do you get there? Well, obviously, you need the necessary infrastructure to make it happen. And the two main restricting factors are energy and our imagination. They say the global infrastructure needs could surpass 94 trillion by the year 2040. It's a big number. So we need to rethink cities. I think we need to rethink community buildings, and groups like Smart Cities, I think, are the perfect place to sort of host these conversations. And I think there's some obvious things that we need to think about. Dr. Ewing pointed out a lot of great data for how we think about cities. But I want to throw out a few things that are maybe a little bit out there, but are definitely going to impact the way cities evolve. Starting with eVTOLs, right? These flying drones. Dubai and Miami are potentially going to be the first two cities to have these live. Dubai, they're saying by the end of this year. Miami's likely to be next year. It probably starts slow in the beginning. I'm sure there's a lot of people be hesitant to get in a drone. But once you start seeing them every day, it's going to get a little bit more comfortable. So transportation changes. All of a sudden in 5 years, when you've got eVTOLs making deliveries and taking 20, 30% of the cars off the road, right? When you can start thinking about your commute a little bit differently with an eVTOL. When you're going to a game, a stadium, right? All these congestion points that we have, that changes cities and the way we design dramatically. Intelligence in orbit. Everyone's been talking about data centers, right? It's just been driving a lot of the construction over the last couple years, while other areas have actually slowed down. Data center investment has sped up. The next iteration of that is going to be in space. right? They call them the Dyson swarms. It's a massive orbiting data centers in space, powered by the sun. It's 6x more efficient, right? Elon Musk suggests by 2030 this is going to be live. So that starts to change construction. Our access to data starts to change the speed at which we get our data, the price of it. Our energy is perhaps the biggest limiting factor we all have. America, in many ways, has been falling behind on our grid. China, in particular, has been leading the world in the power they're generating and the grid that they have been implementing. Thankfully, we have continued to come up with great new technologies in America. We are bringing on around 84 megawatts of power in the US this year. About 60% of that is solar, wind, geothermal, so green energy. And nuclear is back in favor. And there's these new small reactors maybe you've read about. They're really coming along and are going to be powering these data centers on the ground, and I believe starting to make where you develop a city because of the infrastructure will enable us to think about it a lot different because of the location, how quickly you can get a small nuclear reactor onto a site. And then the less sexy stuff, the water and the sewage. Singapore has been a global leader in what they've done here. And the reason I bring it up today is because of where we live. I'm sure most people know that Miami was sued by the federal government for billions and billions of dollars because we have a leaking sewage system. It is disgusting what we're doing right in our backyard. And part of that is because of climate change, but the pipes are literally rusting under us. We have to do better for our environment. We have to do better for sewer. And cities don't run without that. And I mentioned Miami, and I think we all know we are ground zero for climate impacts, which means we should also be ground zero for the solutions that can help improve and change the direction that we're on as a planet. There's a really cool company called Kind Seawalls, if anyone's heard of it. It's a 3D printed seawall company. It's basically a green seawall where organisms can live on the concrete. So you don't have to put the riprap in front of the seawall anymore. It's faster, it's stronger, lasts longer. Basically, every seawall in Miami and Florida, for that matter, has to be raised 12 to 18 inches. Why would we go about it doing the same old traditional way with rebar and poured concrete? Let's look at new ideas, right? 3D printed seawalls, born right here in our backyard. I was just next door in the booth, and there was a young man talking about reef restoration or protecting the reefs, right? That is the first barrier we have in Miami. We better protect those reefs, right? What do we do for stormwater infrastructure? What do we do for the canopy? The United States, they say, is losing 36 million trees a year. We should be adding 36 million trees a year. I'm sure some of you read about what they've done in Medellin, Colombia. They planted 2.5 million trees. Within 2 years, the average temperature in Medellin has gone down 3.6 degrees. It's pretty impressive. You might say, oh, well, it's pretty expensive. It was $6.25 per person to do that. That's, I think, within budget for us. So as the world's changing, as climate change is impacting us, I hope Miami continues to lead and come up with new ideas, and it's folks like this in the room that can help push the ball forward on that. So as we continue to co-create, as we have these dialogues, I think what's most important is we listen. We listen to the communities that we're impacting. We listen to those that are on the front lines to make sure that we're not going in the wrong direction, that technology isn't moving too fast, that we're not leaving certain people behind, because there is a scenario that isn't so great for everybody. And it's incumbent on everybody to make sure that AI is spread equally, that everyone has access to it, right? That we are continuing to rise as a community and build better communities that we're proud of. And there's also a chance, since construction and architecture as an industry has been so slow to adopt, that the biggest companies in real estate in 2040 don't even exist yet. There could be new companies born in the next few years that can run circles around some of the existing legacy companies because the technology is moving that fast. So for the students out there, for those, the entrepreneurs, think big. You have Einstein in your pocket. You have 10,000 Einsteins in your pocket. Use it to your advantage, right? Knowledge is no longer a limiting factor if you know how to use the tools. So I'm hopeful that our industry is going to grow because of technology, that we're going to build better communities, more walkable, livable communities that we're proud of. So thank you again, Dr. Rudy, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you all would like.
So Patrick?
Just yell. Just yell.
Okay. So since you have good vision of the future, I wonder, what do you see AI doing other than estimating? Are there other places that you see AI taking over the world?
AI is going to affect every aspect of the world. I'd say the industries, the blue-collar jobs are probably the safest for the next decade. I think the plumbers are going to be making, and the electricians and the mechanics are going to make a ton of money over the next decade. Beyond that, my vision's not so good. But a lot of the white-collar jobs are at most at threat. But again, it'll be those that don't adapt to that technology and use the AI that'll be endangered. The attorneys and the doctors and the architects that use AI are going to do 10x more work and make more money than ever, in my opinion. And that's the Jevons paradox. If you don't use it, you will fall behind. In construction specifically, yes, it starts off with the design. The design of these buildings is going to compress from months into days because of AI. They're going to be more compliant right off the bat because the architects and design teams will be using AI tools where it won't let them draw something that's not up to code in that neighborhood. The estimating, I mentioned the swarms, from doing the takeoffs to doing the procurement of materials to logistics and shipping. That, again, I think is going to be automated with AI agents. Then the construction, the assembly of the materials will be the laggard, but within a decade we will see robots building a lot of the buildings that are out there and doing those sort of low risk things. I think the finished details will have some time with humans, but again, I think that means lower costs, faster timelines, and more production. Esmer?
Yeah, great speech, by the way, Patrick. Awesome, very inspirational. You highlighted towards the end, for example, AI should be accessible to everyone. And we know what drives AI is data. What are your thoughts on access, management, monetization of data that enables, because it becomes a huge undertaking and often an obstacle.
So big picture. I think America is making a misstep here. China is leading the world with open models. I was in Dubai a month ago, right before the war broke out, actually, and I was at a construction conference. 95% of the companies there were all using Chinese models because they're all open source. They couldn't use the US models. That means the US is losing access to those ideas, that data. So I think there's a huge misstep happening in our country right now, and it's opposite of what America's really stood for, right? Is openness and democracy and data and sharing. So it's interesting how that's evolved, and we'll see how that plays out. At a more micro level, these large language models have basically already trained on all of our data that's open to the public. Your Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any documents that you've published, it's already trained on that. That's over. A lot of companies now, like ourselves, like Togal, for example, will allow you as a user to put up a firewall and not let us train on your blueprints, say. And that's becoming a lot more common, where people can carve off their data. And now you use the intelligence that we have from 20 million plans of other people, apply that to your new set of plans. That's becoming more normal. But the next step of that, I would say, again, for the students or entrepreneurs here, entrepreneurship is the career of the future. So if you want to start a new job, if you want to start a new career, if you have a new idea, it's a lot easier to build something on the back of one of these large language models that's out there. Use all their learnings, and now you come up with your data set and apply it to your company or your sector, or whatever is the problem that you're trying to solve. And that's the real, I think, next upswing here is all these little proprietary companies are going to start because of the data that they have in their business. And that's part of why I alluded to more custom built companies. for each industry because it's their data, but they have the intelligence of these large language models. Thank you.